Hi, today I'm going to do a 1-3 profile. I think it's the first time I do one, at least in English. And it's a particular profile and it's pretty common. So I'm glad that I got somebody asking me to do the profile, and it just turned out it was a 1-3. And I'm going to do first the human design, and then I'm also going to look at the hologenetic profile. But I like to start, like I said before, I like to start with a human design to kind of see how the energy moves in the body, where the person takes in the world, where the person is consistent in its own energy. Say a little bit about the incarnation cross from how we see it in human design, and then in the second video go into that way of seeing it through the hologenetic profile and the gene keys, where the incarnation cross becomes the activation sequence, and how we interpret that in a little bit of a different way. So I am going to share the screen. Right. So here we can see we have a generator with a big split. We can see the 2 centers on the top and then all the centers on the bottom. Actually, let me start to say something about the split. When the split is a short split, and there is just like one little gate, that so if everything would be connected down here, and then it would only be maybe gate 56 that would connect the whole split, so that all the centers would be connected with each other, then that would be probably like a theme in this person's life, to either try to step into the archetype of the 56 and be that, or to always attract people that have this gate. But when there is a bigger split, it's not so much about seeking this or trying to be this. It's more about kind of having those like different parts of yourself that maybe sometimes work together, and maybe sometimes feels like it takes a little bit of time for them to connect. So that's probably the best way I can explain a large split in a profile. So we see, I'm going to go over like the basics again. We see that the sacral center is defined. That means it's a generator. That means there is somebody that has consistent energy, that want to spend the energy on things that are regenerating, because it's kind of, this sacral center is a treasure box, and every time you do something you pay with a coin, and you want to make sure that you get something back. Like when you buy something, you want to get something back. So asking your body, do I want to do this? And like feeling into the body language, like when do you feel drawn to something? And having that response from the body, that's important for generators. And then we can see here that this is a generator with emotional definition. So the emotional center is defined, which means there's somebody who's here to feel a lot, to experience a lot, to desire a lot. And you know, the passion, the romance, the emotions, the desires, the eating, you know, all that is a spice of life. It's really like the colors of life that this person is here to feel. And the important thing that human design teaches us here is that this is not a center to make decisions from. This is a center to feel with, to experience life with. And when it feels like we're on the top of the roller coaster in excitement, it's not the moment to make a decision. Or when we feel very bored in the low of the roller coaster, it's also not a place to make a decision from. So when kind of the roller coaster has stopped, or has like, you know, planed out a bit, and we feel calm, that's when we can make decisions that are going to serve us in the long run. And then at the same time, you know, the emotional center is a bit sometimes is emotional and might make emotional decisions, and that's also part of life. And especially for a 1-3 profile that is here to investigate and experience, that is also part of that life path of not so much bypassing. I would say this is very much my way of seeing it, and it's not really the strategy and authority that we learn in human design, but for me it's also allowing life to live through you, and sometimes actually making emotional decisions. We can learn a lot from that, so that is part of that richness of life as well. So never black and white. We also have here this splenic center is like very, very defined. So many gates that are defined. We have this 3457 that is that channel that we have twice, both in the conscious and the unconscious. So this is the intuition from the splenic center, and the life force and the power from the sacral. So have those two, you know, it's this is a this is the channel of power and the design of the archetype. It's kind of the person who always survives, because if you have the intuition and you have the power, wherever happens, you're gonna survive. And there's also those. This is somebody born in 82, so many of those planets or activations come from people born in this year. So we can see that there is the 50 with this kind of responsibility for humanity, for that equilibrium that we could create of human beings. So we have the 44, we have the 50. This is the ring. This is the ring of the Illuminati. So this is really to know that together we can make it, and nobody is higher. You know, nobody can make the world go under. Really, it's in our hands, and we are taking the responsibility. We're coming to meet. We're coming back to Earth. We are repairing DNA together. So that is that's built into people that are born with these activations. And also seeing that it's a lot of red, so it's also something probably that comes with time. We have it in Pluto, so this is the soul's quest a lot. So having the 50th year in the first line, it is kind of powerful, because this has to do with the soul, and the first line is the foundation. So it wants to understand about those things, but it's probably something that it's not the first thing we think of. It's something that is gonna make itself more obvious as we go along, and also as we move from the south nodes to the north nodes. And here it has to do with liberation, and to move kind of from the struggle of the fifth line of the, like being a leader, but with a lot of struggle, but more moving into that liberation, to the dynamism that the 1-3 always have, moving up to the liberation, to see that there has been struggle and provocation, but now it's about opening up and about being that voice for what we know is true. We also have this channel of the 44 connects to the 26, which is the design of a transmitter. So it's somebody that when you start to listening to that inner voice, you have a message that can be shared, and that message is going to be, people are going to listen to that. And knowing that for somebody as a 1-3, it goes a lot through your own empowerment. So maybe it's like even a message that you would tell yourself, and then other people will get inspired by seeing your empowerment. That's how it can look for a 1-3. We have this channel 3041 that has to do with experiences, with, you know, lightness and anticipation of like everything wonderful that we can live in this life. And the shadow frequency would be fantasy and desire, to kind of just stay in that short term, this like living the desires, like short term, trying to be happy short term, whether, you know, whatever desire we fall into, and the fantasy of not really living the anticipation, like really feeling into what's coming, but actually, you know, not making that connection, like living in a fantasy and kind of just be dragged along from the 30th gate. And on the other side here, we have the collective circuitry, the 1858, the channel of judgment. So a person who can see what's wrong, what's being spoiled, and can be, you know, can share that. It's a collective, so it's like being able to say, okay, this is wrong, this has to be fixed. But somebody who in the shadow frequency can be pretty annoying, because it's a projected channel. So not everybody, we're not always invited to share what's wrong. So being mindful of this, knowing that, especially, you know, you're 1-3, and it's a lot about your own integrity. it's a lot about your own perfection, integrity, your own vitality, I would say, even from the 58. Like, how do you walk in a way that work for you so that you don't fall into stress? That's really the risk with the 58. And here we have somebody that has a lot of perseverance, somebody that can fight for, take the right fights and make sure that those fights are not a struggle, but there is honor in the fight, and there is, there's a sense of purpose in the fight. And we don't even have to call it fight, but in that life journey that has to do with energy and experience. We have two open centers. We have a G center that's completely open. So this is all this could be a curse or a blessing. It could be something that we are unaware of. So then we look outside ourselves in the environment or in other people for finding love, direction, and identity. And also these three things can change depending on who we're with and where we are. So having a kind of unstable, in a way, direction and identity. And also, that, like, do we look for love outside ourselves? What does love mean? And having, finding it inside ourselves. And even if it's open, the openness is more about becoming wise and seeing other people, seeing how we in society can be conditioned in this center, and then thinking that we need to be with somebody to be something, or we need to be with a certain company to have a certain role, like those kinds of things, or thinking that we can only feel love together with somebody, for example. And the throat center is also open, but has activation in it. So this is about, it can be an attention seeking, and that goes together with the third line on the unconscious side, for example. So it could be a seeking for attention or approval, depending on the personality. And also to be able to be influenced in how we speak, because we do take in from the outside, and depending on who we're with, we're going to speak in a different way, which is sometimes good because we can tune in and speak, but really making sure, am I speaking my truth? And the fact that both those centers are undefined, it's kind of a double checking in, is it my truth, and is it my voice that is spoken? So that is something to be aware of, and look at often to kind of make sure that we're speaking and that we're feeling and expressing our truth. We also have the gate of ideas. I think this is Neptune. A lot of people born in 82 has that as well. We have this channel of inspiration and invention, which is a marvelous channel when it's used in that gift frequency. In the shadow frequency, it's about addiction and psychosis. So this is somebody, like I was saying, we have a generator here, and with a split. So if this generator would kind of forget the whole part of the generator down here and function from that life energy, from that saying yes through the body, from that feeling and living through the emotion and the instinct and intuition, and like just go up and live in the head, then that could be a shadow, because it's not somebody who's supposed to live. Nobody's supposed to live from the head, and especially somebody like this that have all this activation here, like really want to regenerate through those centers. So then it would be the psychosis and the addictions of those two gates, and the oppression maybe of the 47th, and then the obscurity of the 11th. You can always thread all the shadow frequencies together, which is not very fun, but being aware that the head and the ajna are here for inspiration and for invention, and that there is a consistent way for this person to process that, and to process through the mind things, but not letting that be the preferred way of living. It's more like an add-on, that it's genius, but it's an add-on. And we could say something. I mean, I also kind of like to show what the incarnation cross is, because sometimes we don't understand where things come from, and then we can look at this here and we can understand the activation sequence of the gene keys. So if you want to load. So here we can see that we have the sun when the person was born in the 45 in Gemini, and then we have the earth on the other opposite that. So those are programming partners. The same thing 3 months before when the soul incarnated, the unconscious side, we have it here in Pisces, and then the earth in opposition. So this is what makes the incarnation cross. And this is also what it makes up the activation sequence in the gene keys. And let's see, 45 and 22. So if we go to love your incarnation cross, it's here. 45. The rulership, is it this one? Right. So let's see, any case that we have. So here it says, let's see, the energy of your cross of rulership is about taking power and controlling your piece of land. This might not be a country. In fact, it may not be land at all. You're driven to take control of something. It might be your apartment or house or a department or section of business work. Whatever it is, there will be this drive to have rulership over it. Rulership is very important as it brings structure to chaos. Ruling is what you are here to do. So this is, for me, a very human design way of saying it. Like, for me, this is a little bit too just like, boom, you know. I want to look at it kind of looking in, like what we do in the activation sequence in the gene. It's like looking into each one of those. I feel like, you know, I feel a lot of the energy of the 55 in this explanation that is here, that comes from the throat and is here to say I have. That's true, but also knowing that it's coupled with a 26 that comes here to sell something, you know, and that comes from the ego. And of course the ego also, you know, is about willpower and and about, it has that flavor of like, I'm worthy of this. But then at the other hand, we also have the 47 and the 22nd, and they are, for me, they are much more feminine in their way. And they bring a bit of a, as well as the 37 and the 40 bring a kind of, you know, Christ theme. I also feel that in the 22 and the 47, because they have to do with this rainbow body, that when we transcend suffering through grace, we walk into a completely new way of embodiment, where all the subtle bodies, like all the bodies from the physical to the more subtle, are part of our experience and how we walk on earth. And the 57 is really part of that, you know, part of that transfiguration. So I feel like in the explanation that we just read, we are not really giving justice to the 22 and the 47. So that's what when we go in and look at the gene keys, we're going to see much more that this unconscious side of the cross. That the unconscious side, I'm going to show it like this so you get more. Here, this side of the cross is very important. This is the soul, this is the body, this is the unconscious. And as Richard always says, that the activation sequence, these 4 gene keys or these 4 gates, that's the activation of the body. That's where we start, and the purpose, this gene key here, which becomes the purpose, that's how we ground. That's really how we ground in our physicality. And from there, we can start to like the pathway of individuation, where our life force is sublimated through our chakras, and we walk as a role model. So I feel like this is what I'm gonna stop here, because we can look a lot at the gate, at the other planets and activations, but I feel like I prefer to do the activation sequence in the hologenetic profile first, and then maybe go back and look at the inner sacred marriage that we can do, that we can look at through the gates that we have here, and looking at Saturn and Venus, for example. So let's just stop here with the human design part, and then we'll go deeper in the next video. Cool, thank you.